Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open a really fascinating document called the Scientific Indictment. It's kind of part engineering textbook, part conspiracy theory, and part, well, a formal indictment against forces it claims are secretly shaping our world. So let's dive right in and see what it's all about.
Right off the bat, doesn't ease you in, it hits you with this warning. It's basically saying that the ideas in this book are like a key, and once you use it to see the world a certain way, well, you can't unsee it. So let's turn that key and see what door it opens.
So, where does this whole story begin? Not with some grand abstract theory. Nope. It starts with a real person, a very real and powerful machine, and a single event that, according to the source, completely shattered his reality.
All right, so let's meet the guy at the center of all this, Kyle P. Knop. The document makes a huge deal about the fact that he's not some philosopher or armchair researcher. He's a hands-on, grease-on-the-knuckles electronics mechanic, and that detail, it argues, is absolutely crucial. So this is Knop's office, basically. He's a lead technician at Eglin Air Force Base, Site C6, working on this absolute beast of a machine, the AN/FPS 85 radar. The source describes it as this massive, solid slab of technology that has no moving parts. It steers its beam just by shifting frequencies. A machine, it says, that literally thinks. And his job is to keep it perfectly tuned.
Everything was normal for him until one day in late 2017. As an expert who knew every single official plane in the U.S. inventory, his world had rules. But then he saw it, a gigantic, totally silent, triangular craft just hovering over a runway. For a guy like him, this wasn't just a UFO sighting. The book calls it a catastrophic system failure in his understanding of physics, and that's what kicked off his obsessive quest to figure out what he saw.
And this is where the investigation takes a really unexpected turn. To understand this weird external technology he saw in the sky, the source claims he had to first look inward, at our own biological technology.
This brings us to the absolute core idea of the book, that the human body isn't just flesh and blood. It's an incredibly advanced piece of biological equipment. The text calls it divine hardware and claims it's capable of perceiving way more than our five senses let on.
And the document zooms in on one specific component of this hardware, the pineal gland. It argues we should forget what we learned in biology class, that it's just for making hormones. No. It claims this thing is actually a biological transceiver, kind of like a two-way radio sitting right in the middle of your brain. Now you might be thinking, this sounds a little out there, right? But here's how the document tries to ground it in actual science. It points to the fact that scientists have found tiny calcite microcrystals inside the pineal gland. And these crystals are piezoelectric, which means they can turn vibrations into electricity and electricity back into vibrations. The source says this makes them perfect little biological antennas, turning the whole gland into a bio-crystalline radio. Okay, so if the human brain has a built-in receiver, the next logical question is there a transmitter? And that's when the document introduces the other key player in the story, the antagonist, if you will.
So now, the story jumps from sunny Florida all the way to the tip of Long Island, New York. And it focuses on another, real, incredibly powerful, though now decommissioned, military radar, the AN/FPS 35.
This thing was an absolute monster. It was part of the huge SAGE air defense network during the Cold War. We're talking a peak power output of 5 megawatts. And yeah, if the location Montauk rings a bell, it's because this is that radar, the one at the very heart of the infamous Montauk Project conspiracy. Okay, here we go. This is the moment the whole book has been building towards. This is where the story shifts away from eyewitnesses and legends and claims to drop a mathematical, smoking gun right on the table. The entire argument boils down to this one critical question. The document is suggesting that the relationship between that Montauk radar and the human pineal gland isn't random. It's a matter of precise, deliberate, resonant tuning. Now, to prove its case, the document pulls out a standard physics formula. Don't worry, we don't have to do the math ourselves. But it's a formula used to find an object's resonant frequency, the natural frequency it vibrates at. In this case, the object is those tiny calcite crystals in the pineal gland. It just takes the speed of sound through calcite and the average size of the crystals.
And when you run those numbers, the speed of sound divided by twice the length of the crystal, you get this very specific value, 440 megahertz.
And this is what the source calls its smoking gun, the calculated resonant frequency of our own pineal glands,
440 MHz, falls perfectly within the known operating frequency band of that powerful AN/FPS-35 radar at Montauk. It's not just close, it's a direct hit.
So what's the big takeaway here? According to the document, this is absolutely not a coincidence. It presents this as a confession written in the language of physics, proof of a deliberate plan to target the very hardware of human consciousness with a specific frequency.
So with that mathematical proof as its foundation, the document zooms all the way out to present its grand, unified theory of, well, pretty much everything.
The argument is that things like the Montauk Project aren't just isolated events. They're individual battles in a much larger, silent, ancient war, a Gnostic war on consciousness, fought using frequency as a weapon to keep humanity's natural abilities suppressed.
And the final conclusion it draws is pretty staggering. It's that human history, as we know it, has been intentionally manipulated. And the goal of this manipulation, to keep us disconnected from our true potential, locked in a state it calls spiritual amnesia and energetic servitude.
In the end, this is the idea the whole document rests on. It's a powerful thought. It argues that the deepest secrets aren't hidden away in some dusty old book of myths or in hushed testimony. They're hidden in plain sight, written down in the technical manuals of the machines we build.
And so the Scientific Indictment leaves us with this final, really provocative question. It basically asks us to step back and wonder, is there an invisible conversation happening all around us, one between the technology we've created and the very biology we inhabit, a conversation that we're just not hearing?